Hi there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the A Minute to Midnight Show. With me today, and I'm in New Zealand, and with me today in the US, I have Mondo Gonzales. And Mondo, it is really good to see you again. Of course, we first met in Auckland. I don't know, I guess it's 2 years ago now. You've been on the show with me a few times, and I always really value your input. So it's great to see you again today.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, and I'm bummed out that I'm not going to see you here in the next in April, but I do plan on, the Lord wills, to make it back in 28 or 27.
Oh, yeah, 27, right? Oh, well, that would be good. Yeah, it would be good to catch up again in person, and yeah, but at least we can do this, and we can still talk.
Yes.
Yeah, this way. So, and never a dull moment. There's lots to talk about. Yeah, I guess the number one thing at the moment that has been a lot of people talking to me about and a lot of articles and things is what's been happening with the Epstein files, and then there's plenty of other things we can talk about. So I think we maybe could start with that, because I think it's, you know, they would like to keep it all hushed up and quiet because there's just so many names, powerful people involved in what I think was a global, not only paedophile ring, but child sacrifices, the whole works with people in powerful positions in America and Europe, and you know, even there was even two New Zealanders that ran one of Epstein's major properties. They're not implicated in any crimes, but you know, so there's connections here as well, and dare I say it, I think, because Ghislaine Maxwell's father was definitely a Mossad asset, and you look down all the you know, things that are going on, the connections, and I think that this shows definite CIA and Mossad tie-ups to Epstein, and by extension into people in the Trump administration now, and they're doing a big job to really try and make it a cover-up of it. That's how I see it. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, there's no doubt when you go down this rabbit hole, it's disgusting. It's really horrifying, and looking at really the whole, I would say, process over the last few years of what we might call the Epstein disclosure. It's, to me, here's this guy who ends up being somewhat of a brilliant individual in many ways. Not so much, I'm not giving him intellectual abilities, but in his craftiness, that he was a power player, no doubt, connections with different intelligence agencies, Israel. I mean, he's Jewish. He was actually very anti, in many of his comments, anti-Gentile. He would often use the word goyim, which is the Hebrew word for Gentile, or you know, somebody non-Jewish. And so he definitely had his connections between Israel and even our own CIA. So, and it's no surprise that neither, I wouldn't expect Mossad or Israel to be godly or righteous. They're a security agency or intelligence agency. I wouldn't expect the CIA to be either the same either way. Really, any place you look in the world. What are they after? They are after power, control, influence. And so to be able to manipulate people, and ultimately what? To blackmail people. So what Epstein offered, which again is he's certainly not the only one. And so this isn't an anti-Semitic comment. It's simply an opportunist where for anybody that would, you got to be careful. This is like, I don't know if people remember the movie The Firm, going way back with Tom Cruise, where he was a lawyer, and he got hired by this firm, which was kind of nefarious. It had its own dark things, but they sent him on a trip, and then they sent a beautiful woman, and she ensnared him, and very, very cleverly. And then they took pictures of it, and what they do, they used it to blackmail him and to keep him under control. So here you have, this is like the bane of human existence, right? And so Epstein was no different in that he was used by any and all people, governments that he'd be willing in order to ensnare people. And so no doubt all this documentation, think about it, millions and millions of pieces of documentation over the years are now being exposed. And of course, just recently, I mean, multitudes and multitudes of names. And again, just because a person's name in there doesn't mean that they're guilty of any criminal offense necessarily. But it's just the associations that he had was super extensive on both sides of the aisle. This isn't a Democrat or Republican thing.
Yeah.
This is, or even a United States or Israel thing. Like we were talking into Europe, as we know, the Prince, King Charles. I think it's King Charles's brother, isn't it?
Yeah.
So here we are. But then to watch the power players. And here in America too, and as much as I'll just say this last thing, to bring it to such a level that Congress passes a law forcing the release of these things, and then Pam Bondi coming on and saying, "We've done it all, we've released it all, we've basically responded completely, concluded the government's congressional right or law that." Demanded the release of all this, when in fact, how much of it was redacted?
Yeah, a ton. Yeah. Hey, and it's interesting, Pam Bondi refused to face the victims. And, you know, when she was doing a questions and answers, whatever you call it, a press conference. And her reaction was like to go on the attack. And the same with Trump. Rather than answer questions, they're flipping it and using it to attack the people answering the questions. And I mean, that's a classic tactic of guilt to me and cover up when people do that. All that does is create more suspicion when they don't give straight answers and things. They just basically attack the person doing the questioning. And I think it's because there are just so many powerful people involved in this, as you say, on both sides of the political aisle. If there's child sacrifice and you know, bail sacrifice and all that involved in this, I mean, does God want it all exposed? And it's just this is going to keep going until it is, or is it just going to end up stonewalled and go nowhere? Because so far no one's getting prosecuted. You know, it's just like mind-boggling over all this stuff, and where it's going to go and what's it distracting from. I'd like your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I'm surprised that Bondi was not asked this, where when confronted about the redactions, she said, well, you know, if there were people who were underage or the victims, those were redacted out. Or she said, or if any of those were currently under other investigations, those were redacted out. And you're like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I appreciate that. Okay. But the next question should have been, well, how many other investigations are currently active? Because in fact, you haven't arrested anybody and you've gone public to say that you don't plan on arresting anybody else. So then if that's the case, then what are these investigations doing? Because you just said there's no more plans. Therefore, all of those elements should be completely unredacted because you just admitted it. Why they didn't confront her on that, I'm not sure.
Well, and the other thing is initially when those documents were released, a whole lot of victims' names and photographs and all that were actually put out there. They only redacted them like 40 minutes later or something. So, you know, I haven't seen that stuff. I've just read about it. So the victims were actually named in many cases and the perpetrators were still redacted. So it's like, hang on, this smells like cover-ups to me.
Yeah, no doubt. And this is where I think, again, when you're, this is like the wag the tail. Well, when you're getting pressure, which she certainly is, then you just release all these names. Why? To distract, because now the fact that anybody or, you know, thousands and thousands of people are going to be named in there. I mean, from every stripe, you name it. Again, it doesn't mean they're guilty, but it's going to cause all those names to be out there. And then it's going to cause all of this other I would say, journalistic interest. Why is that person on there? Why is that person on there? And it's like throwing a bomb right on the midst of all of it in order to to create chaos. That seems to be what it was. And after so long, to have to be forced to do this is very interesting. Again, and I just want to reiterate, the main thing is that there's no further expectations of anybody being prosecuted. This ring goes how deep?
Yeah.
How far? So the fact right there alone is enough for anybody to say, what is going on here? Again, this isn't it just happens to be that it's under Trump's attorney, Department of Justice. But let's remember, the previous Department of Justice didn't do anything about it either.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy died in 2019?
If he died at all.
Exactly. That's the other thing. If he died at all.
Yeah.
So, there's no doubt the left wanted to use all of this to impugn Trump and whatever. They would show pictures of Trump with Epstein and Trump is no saint by any means, but the amount of accusations that were meant against him as it relates to his interaction with Epstein so far, again, we don't have all the information, but so far it seems that Trump, there's nothing at least in the information so far that would really convict Trump of necessarily, because what I mean is, I'm not saying he's innocent, but if it was there, the Democrats would have used it a long time ago. I mean, especially during the previous administration when they were on, the Russia collusion thing and everything else. So the fact that came up empty is surprising to me. But does it mean it's not there? Not necessarily. It just means that how deep do some of the leftists want to go? Because as we know, if they're going to bring it out, then they're going to hang themselves because they're just as involved as we know. Clinton, I think Bill Clinton was one of, and Bill Gates, those guys were one of the highest visitors of all.
And Peter Thiel and people like that, and Elon Musk, and even though Elon Musk denies having any real knowledge of what was going on, the thing is that Thiel and Elon Musk and Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, and others with Epstein were actually together in creating a company after Epstein was already a paedophile, a convicted paedophile, a surveillance company. So it's like there's a lot of lying going on. Zuckerberg was also part of it. So there's a lot of lying going on about who had collaborations with him after his initial conviction and short slap on the wrist with a wet bus ticket, jail time, out 6 days a week to go home, and so on. So and the Acosta, he was responsible for that initial plea deal, which was so lenient. And where is he now? Part of the Trump administration. So it's like it stinks. The whole thing does. And like you say, there's no talk of prosecuting anyone. So you could have this probably the biggest criminal network ever exposed, really, that's not being exposed and going nowhere simply because they're too powerful and too many big names. And what's going to happen to Les Wexner? I mean, giving his huge building for nothing to Epstein. Okay, you give multi-million-dollar buildings to people for nothing every day, right?
Uh-huh. Oh, absolutely. So here we are. What do we know? I mean, from a biblical perspective, why are we surprised? I mean, this is 2 Timothy, 3:13, that evil people are going to get worse and worse and worse all the way to the end, and they're going to be lovers of themselves, lovers of pleasure. 2 Timothy 3, all that whole first part of the passage just reminds you of where we're at. And, just the entire system is corrupt. We see as well that, it's the typical, the way that the enemy works, this left-right illusion.
Yeah.
And we get sucked into it because we think, oh, the right is here. They're going to correct some of this. And then they're going to give a little bit of lip service to some of the issues that we believe are strong. And they might even, as we know, I mean, I appreciate the borders getting secure here. I appreciate that. But on the other hand, you give a little and then you take more over here. And
Yeah.
so there's a little bit of distraction. And this is straight out of 2 Corinthians 11, where Satan appears as an angel of light. And Paul says, is it any surprise then that his servants, Satan's servants, would appear as ministers of righteousness? So at the end of the day, Satan has no problem encouraging you to be a little righteous if he can twist it and get the bigger picture out the other side. So he's not opposed to encouraging somebody to do right, or at least to give a little bit as it relates to a cause, because it causes the person to put their guard down and be like, oh, things are better now. Look at this. And then in reality, you get stabbed in the back.
Absolutely. And there is so much happening, moving us towards control and surveillance and AI and all of this other stuff being taking over the world. And actually, J.D. Vance came out, I think there's 3 or 4 times in one interview, talking about how this is building the New World Order. Wait a minute, I thought the New World Order is just a conspiracy theory, according to Google. Whenever you put anything about it and something comes up under your videos on YouTube, it's a conspiracy theory. Well, I mean, they come straight out and say it. So we are being pushed in that direction. And you mentioned to me off air something else that could be talking of disclosures. What about the UAPs and UFOs and all of that? That's another interesting potential can of worms.
It really is. And there's been a lot going on. There was a new documentary that was put out right after Thanksgiving on Prime Video, Amazon Prime, called The Age of Disclosure. And I encourage people to watch it. It was probably, there's no doubt, it is probably the best documentary that has been done to date on the topic, primarily because of the ability of the producer, the director, to gain access to over 30 high-ranking individuals, whether they were in the United States government, politics, or even in the military. You had admirals, you got Department of Defense officials. Marco Rubio says not only was he a state, was he a senator, but also now the Secretary of State. You name it, boom, 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 all the way through. And what was interesting about it is the access that this producer was given into the discussions. And so right out of the gate, I think this is where he kind of hooks you in, is he does a montage of all these people. These, again, these aren't conspiracy people. These are people in government and in the military. And all of them, we are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone, all the way through. And then, of course, you have whistleblowers, David Grush, whole bunch of Fravor, a whole bunch of others. And what do you see? Well, you see them talking about, number one, physical craft that have been found. This isn't just lights in the sky anymore, and then you also see them discussing, many of them, not just David Grush, talking about seeing personally biologics. Okay, these are these beings that are non-human. So you have a lot of discussion and introduction of non-human intelligence, what that looks like, and just over and over and over. And also the secrecy that has been happening through military contracts, military contractors, and also, deep, basically off the book projects. And here there's been several hearings over the past few years. And the question is does the United States Congress have the ability to demand answers with congressional money? And so this, again, goes back to some of these off-book projects. Well, at the end of the day, with all these meetings that have happened, and especially the United States House of Representatives has been trying to get answers, they are not forthcoming. And even though they have demanded it. And so it brings up a whole bunch of other situations again. And so for me, my heart is for the church. And so I think in terms of, is the church ready for a potential disclosure conversation? We know just in the past few days over the weekend, Barack Obama has actually talked quite a bit about the alien existence concept going back to his administrations. But he was interviewed just recently, and he made the comment that the person asked him, "Are aliens real?" He said, "Yes, aliens are real." And it was just straight up. And he said, "I've never seen them. And I'm not saying that they're down at the Area 51, but they're real." And you think, wow, okay, where's he getting that information from?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he's been told something, whether he's seen him or not. But that was one of the first things that he wanted to participate in when he got into office in 2008. So the other thing, I'll just say this too, is that in July 8th is the 79th anniversary of Roswell. And so there's been rumors, it's what they are, that Trump, who wants to be number one at everything.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just his kind of narcissism.
Yeah.
Where he can be goaded many times based on his own reputation, is he wants to be the guy that is the only one bold enough, brave enough to go through and to share disclosure. So some people are wondering whether Obama saying what he said was provoking Trump to do it. And so people are wondering whether Trump is going to go July 8th and go public with it.
Obama, of course, was another name in the Epstein list, as having visited his island and all of that too. And you say, is Obama goading Trump into it? Well, I guess the other alternative to that is that they're all controlled and Trump is just another operative of bigger fish behind him, controllers and puppet masters, and Obama too. Is this part of the script that they've been given, Trump and Obama? This is where we're taking this. And then, like you say, the bigger question is, if there is some sort of a disclosure, how is the church going to respond? How are Christians going to respond? Is it going to destroy their faith? Or is it going to be, incorporated into things? Or are they going to see it for what it is, biblical deception?
Absolutely, because there was a research effort project done by the Brookings Institute, years ago, decades ago now, where they came to the conclusion that if disclosure was to happen, that the church, one of the reasons why that led for disclosure always to be pushed off, even potential disclosure, was because of the fracturing of society was their anticipation. Because decades ago, society was much more Christian in their framework and religious, and in that regard, where I don't think now, after 30, 40 years of movies and Marvel and Independence Day and Hollywood, anybody under 30 is not, especially here, it's like 1% of people under 30 are so-called Christian, and I would say Bible-believing Christians. So they're going to go, oh, cool. What I want to see them. It's not going to ruin their worldview because they don't have a biblical worldview. So then it comes back to, and this is one of the things that I've been asking is, what is, for those that are truly Bible believers, is it possible for them then to have their faith ruined? So here's the question is, if you take it at face value, which not everything that was mentioned in the documentary, do I believe everything in there, but you do see a tremendous level of credibility when it comes to the people discussing these, where they've seen biologics, they've seen non-human beings there. So what does a Christian do with that information? Because we're supposed to believe that there are no other non-physical human beings of any kind except humans. So what are they? Are they from Zeta Reticuli, from Alpha Centauri? Does God have other beings in his creation that flew here? And again, at the end of the day, we're approaching the end of the age, where we understand in 2 Thessalonians 2 that a massive delusion, a strong delusion is coming, which is going to involve a lot of different areas. I would say there's no doubt the alien discussion, spiritual things, spiritism, who is the Antichrist, who is the false prophet. There's a lot of things that come into play as it relates to deception. Who is God? Is there God? Certainly the Lord Jesus Christ and the gospel message. But we know that during the book of Revelation, during that time frame, there is there's angels flying around. That whole what we've seen, that veil between the supernatural and the natural is going to be removed during this time frame. So that's why the first thing Jesus said in Matthew 24:4 is, let no one deceive you, because many are going to come, they're going to claim to be Christ, the Messiah, they're going to be false prophets and teachers, and he says they'll deceive many. So the question then is, how is the church, does the church have a framework to understand they're a physical craft? Knock on it, it's hard. Yeah. Where did it come from? Who mined the material? Where is it coming from? And biological entities that are non-human. Can the church handle that in their framework?
I think it's, really interesting to go back to Genesis chapter 6 and look at that with the sons of God coming down and, entering the daughters of men, and then you get the Nephilim and the men of renown and all that. So the Bible does show us that something similar has happened in the past, and then the flood came and knocked them all out. Well, obviously maybe some survived or whatever, but the majority of the Nephilim were wiped out in the flood. But it's happened before, so there's every reason to believe it could happen again. So it doesn't contradict anything in the Bible at all. It just fulfills it. And, I used to have on the show quite regularly a few years ago Stan Deo, and he kind of worked in anti-gravity field and all that, and was very, very interesting to listen to. And he believed that the aliens, a lot of them were like basically a meat suit with a demon in them, and that kind of thing. They didn't come from some faraway planet, and craft could be a mixture of human-made ones and alien, ones that have been created with the help of these spiritual fallen beings and things. And then they could also use technology to create a deception with holograms and all sorts of other things to make more of them than really were. And, so there's a whole lot of ways this deception could play out. But I agree. I think the deception and the delusion that'll come upon people will be so convincing, unless our feet are grounded in the Word of God, and so and everything we see, it has to be based on what did Jesus teach and all of that. Then we look at everything else from that perspective. Then there's no reason why any of us can't be deceived.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I gave a presentation recently and was just examining all of what we know at the current moment, the kind of the disclosure movement and how it has begun and when it began. This isn't anything new. It's obviously gained steam with the congressional hearings over the past few years. Primarily, they began around 2021, 22, but disclosure in the public forum really began in about 2017. So we're making progress in that sense. But one of the things that I looked at was, okay, I the same thing. These alien biologics, meat suit, demons possessing them. It's interesting that if they don't really act like demons. Demons are pretty wild, and if you look at what demons, how they present themselves in Scripture, they generally are violent. They generally are looking to fulfill their lusts. But if you look at a normal gray, it's interesting to me that they have no sexual organs. They got really no mouths. And so these meat suits are not really designed to fulfill the lusts of any kind of flesh. So that's why I have a little challenge with believing that they're simply demonic meat suits. But one of the things that I've tried to help is getting the Bible out. What do you see? Most of the time, we talk in terms of, well, there's a spiritual realm and there's a physical realm. Well, define what the spiritual realm is, because in reality, do you mean non-physical? Because it's interesting too that when Jesus showed up in Luke 24, this is like the theology of Jesus. He shows up and he's in his glorified body. He had this post-resurrection. So he's sitting there, he shows up to the disciples, and of course, they think he's a ghost. They think he's non-physical. They think they're like, no. And so he says, okay, touch me. So they touch him. So now he's physical. They still are doubting. And he said, okay, do you have any food? Give me some food. Okay, give me some food. I'll eat with you and show you. For a spirit does not have flesh and bone as I have. Okay. Well, what's fascinating to me is, so based on that theology, the singular proof that Jesus used to show something being physical was having them eat. Well, you think, okay. Well, in Genesis 19, two angels show up to meet with Lot, and what do? They eat. So this kind of expands your horizon, and they show up there in 18, and they eat with Abraham. So now they're eating. This is a normal thing for them. So based on the theology of Jesus, these angels, or at least some of them, are physical. They're not just these spiritual, ethereal beings, which, again, as you brought up in Genesis 6, this is why you can have angels are physical. They're eating, and they can show up and mate with human women because they have the equipment and the physicality to do such a thing. Therefore, you have genetic manipulation and interference going on in the book of Genesis, and Genesis 6:2 through 4 says, and also afterwards. That's why the Nephilim reappear in Numbers 13, and we see Goliath appearing in 1 Samuel 17. So these fallen angels are physical beings, which then have the ability to manipulate. So in my mind, you have physical interference, and the question is, could they be bringing some level of technology? And I think that there's definitely evidence of angelic technology. We see this in 2 Kings chapter 6. We see it in other places. So I think if we get the Bible out and we look at some of these hints, and they're not even hints, it's pretty straightforward, but there's not a lot of them. I think when you bring up Genesis 6, Tony, how many of the churches today even believe that that's real?
Yeah.
Like 0.1%. So therefore, when you take the one thing that can provide Genesis 19, 2 Kings 6, Genesis 6, when you take a few of these passages that can actually speak to the physicality of what we're seeing as it relates to UFOs in the sky, biological suits, if you remove those out of the Bible for certain Christians, then how are they going to understand anything in that paradigm? They're going to be completely left, because for them, there's nothing that can account for what they're seeing here.
Yeah, well, that's true. So where do you think these aliens have come from? Basically, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, there's a couple options. One could be, and this is a verse that I quote often, is Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret things belong to the Lord, but those things he has revealed to us belong to us. Okay. So my question to all of us as believers, has God revealed everything to us? Well, clearly the answer is no. God has secret things.
Yeah.
So theoretically, okay, is it possible that God has created other beings in other parts of the universe or the galaxy? Of course it is. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying Jesus died on that planet and he died on that planet like the Mormons or this or that. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. But is it possible that there are other creations? Of course there are. We know that there are other creations that are physical, and presumably angels. So we already have that. So that is not unprecedented. Now, do I think that these things that we're seeing in the sky over generations are from, Alpha Centauri? I don't. I mean, I would love to see evidence of that, but I'm not willing to deny that it's possible.
Right.
Because there's nothing in the Bible that would force me to do that. So I'm not a heretic because God has secret things. But I tend to see that what we're seeing in this situation is, I do think that fallen angels have made agreements with wicked, sinful men in the modern era, going back to different parts of the military. Why would that surprise me? Majestic 12. Why would that surprise anybody? Because why? Well, fallen angels have done this in the past, as we see in Genesis 6 as an example. So we're trying our best to understand it from a biblical paradigm, to see that they're providing technology and craft, and they have these, again, these grays or others that they've been able to manipulate and to create physically through hybridization or whatever. And see, the other thing that, again, most Christians don't want to talk about is, which is well documented, is the abduction phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the purpose of that? And I talk about this as well. And what about cattle mutilations? Why are they taking bovine blood?
That's the thing is, with a lot of these abductions, what do? They do experimentation on them. They do painful things. They do sexual things. So,
Yep.
Exactly. So, yeah, what's the purpose of it? There has to be a purpose of it.
There has to be a purpose of it. And so this is where, again, this isn't something, as a pastor, I'm preaching on Sunday morning, okay, for sure. But I think when the delusion comes, when the deception comes in full force, as a Christian, am I going to be confused? Hopefully the answer is no. I'm going to be like, well, no surprise for me, because I understand Genesis 6.
Yeah.
This is going to be 100% part of what has happened prior. This is not unprecedented, where you have physical fallen angels coming down and interacting for the sake of doing things that are evil, with the interference of humanity or physical offspring. So to me, when I see this, I go, wow, no surprise here. This is like, Genesis 6 2.0.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It will be interesting to see what does come out in recent times, because there's been talk of disclosure, year after year. It's going to happen this year. It's going to happen this year. And it hasn't so far, but maybe this year will be the year it happens. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel is watching this, because, ultimately for me, this is 1 John 4. The Bible tells us to test the spirits.
Yeah.
It doesn't even necessarily tell us to just believe in miracles, because we know that the Antichrist, he comes with all power. 2 Thessalonians 2, think about that. That's literally what it says. He comes with all power, signs, and deceiving wonders, miracles. So there's this kind of obscure verse that appears in Deuteronomy 13, where God says to the... Hold on, there's a... Sorry, I got my phone there. There we go. Some emergency. God says to the Israelites, when you get into the land, okay, this is Deuteronomy 13, they're not in the land yet. When you get into the land and someone arises and he does a miracle, or he gives a prophecy and it comes to pass, well, that's pretty amazing. I thought only God can do that. No, we know that's not the case. Read Exodus chapter 4, right? With Satan throwing down his rod, and the Egyptian priest throwing down their rods, their staff, and it becomes a snake. I mean, just a wooden staff becomes a snake. That's pretty amazing. But he says this: if they bring to you any other message and try to get you to serve other gods, know that I am allowing that as a test. So what I want to say is, okay, a ship comes down. I'm going to go up and knock on the door. Hello, are you in there? Okay, my first question and only question to you is, do you believe that Jesus of Nazareth is Messiah and Lord, the Son of the living God, and salvation is found in him alone? Yes or no? I'm not interested in anything else. Don't tell me about anything else. Don't tell me where you came from. Do you affirm that Jesus is Lord? Yes or no? That'll give me my answer. That's testing the spirits. That's testing their message.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Yeah. If there's one thing that people take out of this whole show, I think that's probably it. And that's what I said before, everything needs to be taken from the perspective of what does the Bible teach? What did Jesus teach? And then everything needs to come from that position to be weighed up, not the other way round.
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right, Mondo, as we look, I guess, to wrap up, you can give me any final thoughts that you want to bring out and tell the people where they find you.
I appreciate it, Tony. You know, we do all of our stuff at prophecywatchers.com. We're all over the place. We have a lot going on, television and social media and magazine and conferences and stuff. And so I will tell people we have it here. Our upcoming conference is coming up in June. We have live streaming available, so that's worldwide. If you don't want to come to America, you can still watch things through live streaming. But I just tell people that what we're watching, we didn't even talk about, which we could, artificial intelligence and all the things that are happening right now, that we're entering into an age where, especially with artificial intelligence and videos, I just encourage people, don't believe almost anything that you see online or through a picture or a video, because most of it is 100% fabricated.
Yes.
It just is. So we're entering into a new age where there's this is the age of deception, where it has never been greater. This is, I think, why Jesus said what he said. Not only digitally do you have deception, but as we mentioned, when we enter that final age, that final time frame, there's going to be supernaturalism to the nth degree. But just like in Deuteronomy 13, anybody seeking to do a miracle, I don't care about that. Revelation 13, he's doing miracles. I don't care. He's bringing down fire from heaven. Is he? Whoever's doing it, are they encourage you to follow the Lord Jesus and him alone? So that's what God said in Deuteronomy 13. If they follow you to follow any other God besides the God of the Bible and his Messiah, then it's God has allowed it to be a test to see who would be faithful.
Absolutely, and I completely agree that we have to be more diligent than ever to check sources and all of that on any videos, articles, whatever you read. Don't just take it as gospel truth. Double check everything, because there's an awful lot of fake and false stuff out there. Videos all on YouTube, 3/4 of them seem to be AI now. Articles, you don't know whether they're written by humans half the time or AI, or what the agenda is behind them. People need to do their really diligent research to double check everything before you believe any of it. So I'll leave that as my final thoughts. And I want to say a big thank you, Mondo, for this discussion. I really do hope people will share it, like it, and share it. And we'll have to do something similar again soon, because you mentioned AI and there's a ton of other things we could have discussed. So thank you so much for a great discussion today.
Amen, brother.
Cheers. Folks, please also make sure you subscribe to us at aminutemidnight.com. The way to do that is going down the right-hand side of our website, where you see something that says enter email to subscribe to blog. That's the way that you get notified of all of our shows and articles, and some of those articles you only find at our website. You won't find them anywhere else. So please subscribe to us. As I mentioned, please like and share this video. And also remembering, we do run A Minute to Midnight 100% by donations. I would really appreciate some help. At the moment, it's fallen on the same people for quite a while. Monthly, there are a handful of people that donate regularly. But overall, donations are kind of down a bit, and we could really do with the help. If anyone's able, that would be appreciated. And you can donate at aminutemidnight.com. So God bless, and God willing, we'll be back with another show in a very short period of time. I've got quite a lot of shows lined up, so we'll be pretty regular in the next little while with new episodes.